There's a group of people psychologists still don't quite know where to place. Not fully Generation X, not really millennials either. And if you were born somewhere in between, you've probably felt that. You recognize parts of both worlds, but neither one completely fits. You remember a childhood without the internet, but you also came of age as everything went online. You didn't just witness a change, you were shaped by it. Researchers later gave this group a name, Xennials, but the label isn't the important part. What matters is this: you grew up at a very specific moment in history, one that quietly changed the way you think, adapt, and see the world in ways most people don't even realize. Before everything became instant, you had to wait. You had to remember phone numbers, not scroll through contacts, actually remember them. If you missed a TV show, that was it. No replay, no second chance. And when you made plans, you couldn't text running late. You just showed up or hoped they did. That kind of world required something different: trust, patience, commitment. You didn't realize it at the time, but you were training a very different set of instincts. You learned how to sit with boredom without needing to escape it. You learned how to be present because there was nothing else pulling your attention away. And that version of you still exists somewhere in the background, quiet but not gone. And then it changed. Not slowly, not in phases. Almost all at once. One moment, your world was offline. The next, everything started moving online. You went from a few ways to reach someone to dozens. Friendster, then MySpace, then Facebook, each one rewriting how you connect. You didn't get time to prepare for it. There was no guide. You just adapted. You learned new systems while still holding onto old ones. And without realizing it, you became fluent in both. A world where people show up, and a world where people just appear on a screen. And somehow, both felt normal to you. Here's the part most people don't think about. While all of this was happening, your brain wasn't finished yet. The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for decision-making, impulse control, and adaptation, is one of the last regions to fully develop. In 2013, a study published in Nature Neuroscience analyzed brain development using fMRI scans across roughly 200 participants between the ages of 8 and 30. The conclusion was clear. This region continues maturing well into the mid-20s, which means something important. When the world suddenly shifted, you were still in a phase of high neural plasticity. You weren't just reacting to change, you were being shaped by it in real time. Young enough to absorb new systems quickly, old enough to remember what came before. That combination is rare, and it quietly gave you something most people don't realize you have: the ability to adapt without completely losing your reference point. Because of that, you move differently through the world. You can sit in a real conversation without reaching for your phone every few seconds, but you can also navigate new apps without feeling overwhelmed. That's not common. People from Generation X often approach technology with caution. People from millennials often treat it as the default environment. But you learned both. You remember what it feels like to be completely unreachable for hours, and for that to be normal. And yet, you don't panic when everything moves faster now. You adjusted, not by choosing one system over the other, but by carrying both at the same time. Almost like a kind of psychological bilingualism. You can switch between depth and speed, presence and convenience. And most of the time, you don't even notice you're doing it. There's a nim and other difference you might not notice at first. Your past isn't fully recorded. Your worst haircut, that awkward moment, that mistake you wish you could erase. There's no photo, no post, no permanent trace. It only exists in memory. And memory doesn't work the way people think. In 2007, the American Psychological Association summarized decades of research on autobiographical memory. Across multiple studies involving hundreds of participants, researchers found that personal memory is not fixed. It is reconstructive. Every time you recall something, you reshape it slightly, which means your past could evolve, soften, fade where it needed to. But now, everything is documented. And when memory becomes data, it stops changing. So here's the quiet difference. You grew up with the ability to forget, and most people coming after you didn't. And just as you were stepping into adulthood, something else hit: the 2008 financial crisis. You were supposed to be building stability. Instead, the ground shifted again. Jobs disappeared. Opportunities narrowed. Uncertainty became normal. In 2010, Research published by the American Economic Association analyzed thousands of young adults entering the workforce during the recession. The findings were consistent. Starting your career in a downturn can reduce earnings for up to 10-15 years. And it doesn't just affect money. In 2015, data from the National Bureau of Economic Research, using large population samples, showed long-term increases in financial anxiety and lower tolerance for risk, which means something deeper happened. You didn't just learn how to adapt. You learned that stability can disappear without warning. And even if your life looks stable now, a part of you still remembers that moment, quietly asking, what if it happens again? So you end up carrying two systems at once: independence and connection, skepticism and optimism. And somehow they don't cancel each other out. They coexist. You grew up before constant supervision became normal. No one tracked your location. No one checked in every hour. You figured things out on your own. And that left a mark. You learned to rely on yourself, to solve problems without immediate help, to sit with uncertainty and move anyway. But then you entered adulthood right when the internet promised something different, that everything could be connected, faster, easier, better. And for a while, you believed that too. So now you live in both realities. You trust people, but you also prepare for disappointment. You see the value in systems, but you don't fully depend on them. And here's the key insight. You're not inconsistent. You are the logical result of growing up between two completely different worlds. When you've lived through both worlds, you start to notice what changed and what it cost. You gained speed, access, endless information at your fingertips. You can reach almost anyone, anytime. But something else shifted quietly. You lost the natural rhythm of waiting, the kind that builds patience without you noticing. You lost moments of pure presence, when nothing else was competing for your attention. And maybe the biggest one, you lost the ability to be alone with your thoughts, without effort. Before, that was the default. Now, it takes intention. And here's the difference most people miss. You're not just nostalgic for the past. You remember it clearly enough to recognize what was traded away. You don't reject the present, but you don't fully trust it either. Because you've seen both sides. And once you've seen both, you can't unsee the exchange. At some point, you start noticing it. You don't fully fit anywhere. Too young for one group, too old for another. You understand both, but neither feels like home. And for a while, it can feel like something is wrong, like you missed your place. But here's the shift. Nothing is wrong. That's exactly what you are. Not misplaced, but positioned in between. A bridge. Someone who carries context from both sides. And in a world that keeps changing faster than people can process, that's not confusion. That's awareness. Because you've already done this once. You've lived through a complete shift and adapted. Not perfectly, but successfully. So maybe your advantage isn't knowing what comes next. Maybe it's this. You know how to stay grounded while everything else changes. And if this felt familiar, there's more to explore. Because sometimes understanding your pattern is the first time you actually understand yourself.